Did you do the date?
Date.
Fixed it.
You got it fixed?
Yeah.
It said the 1st.
Charlie fixed it.
Charlie did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I kept looking for it and I
a
couldn't
couple
find it.
Sabbaths ago, we had a reading of that covered something, or it got me reminding. I think we actually read it, but it got me thinking about something in Scripture. It started me digging on Benjamin.
We got one little book. Did you do it already? A little bit of housekeeping.
Oh, I haven't done that in here yet, but I was going to do it in the service.
That use this bathroom in here. As long as you're just doing number 1, everything's good. But if you got to do number 2 with toilet paper and all that, you got to go up front.
Yeah, don't flush anything other than liquids in this.
I just got it open at 8:00 last night. So.
It was clogged again?
Again. Yes,
oh
ma'am.
Oh my goodness.
Plumbers can't figure it out either.
My son can't. He's done everything he knows to do. He said,
I know what we need to do.
Have you got a small snake? Has he?
No, I
got
don't.
A small snake. His what he said.
We might need to anoint the toilet with oil and pray over it and exorcise the demon.
Maybe.
I've got a small snake, I think.
At least Brother Kenyon thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Well, if you do, then you give me so he can run just that drain.
I don't know if I'd want to see what came out
I'll bring
if
it.
we
I think mine's-
exercised the demon, but
I think mine's only about 50 feet, but it's just
That's
small.
fine.
All
That's
right.
fine.
I'll bring it.
So,
In fact, let me text my what. Well, she probably don't know where it is.
like I was saying, I got to studying on Benjamin. I've been on this now for about 2-3 weeks, and it got me digging into Benjamin.
Where is my snake?
Benjamin and the tribe of Benjamin. And I remembered something that Sister Joe Ellen had told us a while back, and we're going to cover that later today. But you remember when Jacob takes his wives and everybody, and he leaves. Is it Laban or what's his? Okay, so he leaves them, and Laban comes, catches up to him, and says, "Hey, why'd you take my gods? My idols?" And Jacob says, "Well, go ahead and search for them, and the one who has them shall not live."
That's right.
I remember
she
that.
She did not.
No. She didn't. But those curses tend to follow down the line with your children.
Oh, I believe that with all my heart.
Yeah. Well, I got to thinking about that, and we have to remember that the birthright goes to Joseph, who's the leader of the northern kingdom, but he's also one of Jacob's children, one of Rachel's children. So
the beloved.
So both Benjamin and, yes, the beloved of Yahweh, which is in Benjamin's prophecies. So both of Rachel's children will die. Well, how? They weren't born yet, or they had been born or whatever, but still spiritually it was death. But Joseph's got the birthright. So somehow or another, I started wrestling with that. How's that work? And Benjamin's the key to understanding this. Benjamin is important for this. So I dug up some things and I put it in a Word document and I saved it as a PDF. For those of you who are interested, you can go back to our Sabbath study class Facebook page. If you're not a member, it's a private page so that we don't have everybody in the world messing with it. It's just for our group. But if you're joining us online, you want to get in it, you got to find somebody that on Facebook that's part of this congregation.
And this is an answer prayer for me, because I'm going to tell you something. I've seen this. I saw this years ago. Never have heard anybody pull the nuggets out and concentrate on the subject.
We're going to do that today. But we've got a PDF up, so everything that's in my hand is in that PDF that you can download. So
2015.
I found on BibleGateway.com, I found on the Encyclopedia of the Bible, they've got a thing on Benjamin. The descendants of Benjamin, the youngest son of Jacob. And as Joellen was pointing out a little while ago, the only son of Israel.
The only son of Israel.
After his name had been changed.
Yes, sir.
That's important. It's the same human being, but his Shem has been changed at this point. So at the time of the first census under Moses, the able-bodied men available for war from the tribe of Benjamin was 35,400. And at the time of the second census, it's 45,600. So roughly 10,000 men have been added in 40 years. Benjamin's the smallest of the tribes, the youngest of the tribes. But notice something here. His position was on the west side of the tabernacle, along with Ephraim and Manasseh or whatever. Okay. Yeah, his uncle. Now here's the big thing here. Big deal with this. Benjamin's a warrior tribe. So are Ephraim and Manasseh. So on the west end of the tabernacle, we got some can of whoop butt here, okay? That's Israel's don't mess with that side of the tabernacle. They'll clean your clock. And traditionally, historically, they will.
And I can't even imagine how great they would have been then because they were whole. You know, they got divided. And I know there's a true reason for the division.
Well,
but
not only that, now you want nuggets for Benjamin. Okay. Which way is Yahweh going to push Ephraim and the northern kingdom? Going to push them west.
yes,
And
west,
what end
young
of the
man.
tabernacle are they on? The west. They're going to be pushed west. Why would Benjamin be with them? Why is Benjamin with Ephraim and Manasseh? And this is just a question. I got an answer to that. I don't know if it's right, but I'm going to get to it. But that at that point, that stuck out to my why Benjamin as opposed to any
Because it's
other.
Rachel. That is
It's
all Rachel right
Because
there.
it's Rachel.
Sew it up.
Because it's Rachel.
I was thinking that it may not be directly related to that, but two Benjamin came south who were the missionaries to the west, basically.
Where did they plant Rachel? Now all the rest of them were in the cave that he bought. But where was Rachel put?
Oh,
Bethlehem.
yeah.
Where was Messiah born? So it's like
It all ties
it's
together.
a knot.
And this is, if
Have
you
y'all girls, have y'all ever done that, you know, where you can get a hold of a string and pull it and the whole thing will come loose? You know,
Yes.
you don't have to pick.
we're pulling on a string, we're
That's what
unraveling a
we're
string.
doing. We're pulling on a string.
This is, have y'all ever heard, I know you've heard me say that sometimes Hebrew thinking is fuzzy. It's related. It doesn't have a very clear picture, and it's not supposed to. It's kind of thinking feeling. It's feel thinking or whatever. You know it's all connected. You don't know how. I don't think we're supposed to see exactly clearly this picture this side of eternity. But you should see, oh, wow, there's something there. It should be a string you start pulling on, especially with Benjamin. So now the geography of Benjamin. They put a note here. It says the exact boundary lines of Benjamin's territory are impossible to determine with certainty. Now, I'm not going to read all of it, but they expound in this. And if you want it, it's on our Facebook page. But they give you several passages in the scripture that show you that. But they say generally, Benjamin's territory lay between that of Judah on the south and the house of Joseph on the north. So Judah on the south, the house of Judah, and the house of Israel to the north, and Benjamin right in the middle. And remember when we had this talk about the tribe of Benjamin had been split, and everybody's like, no, it never was. I can't find it again, but I remember a couple of y'all were sitting on the couch out there, and Sean was here at that time, and I found it and I shared it with everybody. I found the link, and I've still been looking for it in scripture. And I can't find it again, but I know as a fact, I stumble across it every now and then. And I think this is one of those things the adversary purposely snatches from my brain on purpose, because it's key to helping to understand the prophecies of Ephraim and Judah.
You see it in the renewed covenant
Yes.
because, you know, he picked several Benjamites to go in, you know, to be the disciples, and even Paul.
Well, there's a good chance that all of the apostles were Benjamites.
It could have been, but there was for sure a good majority.
Yes.
We'll go with that. But no, that shows us that some of them were with the married wife because they were there at the time of Messiah.
But they also, because of an event in Benjamin's history, we have to remember that
They were tied to Judah.
Benjamin's not just tied to Judah. Benjamin's tied to all the tribes.
He is, but Judah took responsibility.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that. But remember, though, that when they almost wiped Benjamin out, everybody has to give them, you know, from the tribe to bring them back up to strength again. Otherwise, Benjamin would have not been.
You know, I've thought about this myself as a mother and a parent. Can you imagine what it would have been like for Judah to have to live with his father that grieved from the time that they did that until his death? He grieved, even though he found it. That grief was still there. It had caused him to have age faster than he would have aged because of that. And he had to live with that. And that was the reason why when they went in, he said, I'll take that one's place. They never did Benjamin like they did Joseph.
No.
You know, they treasured him because that was their daddy's heart.
Mm-hmm. So the Encyclopedia of Benjamin goes on. It says, now in the territory, Joshua 18, verses 21 through 27, gives a list of many cities and towns contained within the territory of Benjamin, and it includes them at the time of Jebus, which is Jerusalem, and of Jericho. So we know that Jerusalem lies within the territory of Benjamin. So it's neither Judah nor the house. It doesn't belong to either house. And this is where I still haven't got this one figured out, but Benjamin belongs to neither and both at the same time. And that's the key. Benjamin's a go-between, both physically where he's located, and he's also in connection with the house of Joseph. Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh. That's the birthright. The birthright stays with Ephraim, so there's the birthright, and his territory and his heart. The heart of the tribe is also connected to Judah, where the scepter lies. That's important right there, because that's your promises into the eternal kingdom. That's the prophecies right there of the renewed covenant. It's right there. And it's all physically as well as spiritually connected. And this is Benjamin's territory was strategically located for warfare. The main highway was from north to south, passing through it. The tribe seems to have met the challenge of this position, becoming known for skillful archers and slingers. A special feature of the Benjamite warriors was that they were completely ambidextrous, being able to handle the sling equally well with either hand.
I said the Vikings, that's what they were.
Yeah.
They got to be out of Benjamin because they were unbelievable.
So, and that's a mark of a warrior there. I know even in our time today, they'll train you to shoot left-handed, right-handed, either way. In case something ever happens to one hand, you can switch over and you're still just as effective. So that tells us that the tribe of Benjamin trained. Okay, from the time of birth, they probably trained for war, which is unusual in this time. Okay, because usually in the days of the ancient times in the Near East, you didn't train for war. You didn't usually have a standing army in any country. Whenever the king wanted to go to war, he just drafted you up and off you went. This can be a little different with Benjamin, but don't forget, as strong as they are, history shows us who's the strongest military tribe in all of Israel, in all of Jacob's sons, all the tribes. Who's the strongest of the military tribes? It's not Benjamin. Ephraim. Yeah, Ephraim is as mean as Benjamin is. Ephraim whoops tail whenever they're in a war.
All of them when they came out of Egypt, they all had warriors.
Yes.
Every tribe. And, we see that when they came into the land, before they crossed over the Jordan, that land right before that was good. It was good for cattle. And they said, why can't we have this? And it was okay. They just had to give their men and go fight so the rest, could get theirs. So we know that they had a standing army. It was just, they did everything. It wasn't that they just did warfare.
Now, here's where I start getting a fuzzy picture of how this all works. First king of Israel is Saul. He's a Benjamite.
Yeah.
Now, this is because the people wanted a king like the rest of the Gentile nations. It's not what Yahweh wanted for them. Yahweh was their king up until that time. And then the prophecy of Ahijah, or Ahijah, or Ahiah, I don't know how to pronounce that. He's the one who divides up his garment into 12 pieces and gave 10 of them to Jeroboam with the explanation that he would rule over 10 tribes. This prophecy allows the possibility that Benjamin remained with Judah. I know that the Benjamites remain with Judah. The scriptures are clear on that, but they're not clear on. They don't tell us for sure that Benjamin goes with Judah. They don't say that. But if you keep reading into the Chronicles, there are Benjamites everywhere around with Judah. So a good portion of the tribe of Benjamin stayed with Judah, but a good portion of it also went with the house of Israel. So it's like there's a fuzzy blinding right there in the history of Israel that we don't know specifically what happens to Benjamin. We're not told that.
I think it's in the natural. And, we have to look at the spiritual. We have to look at the natural too. Because he was who he was, and he was the baby, and just beloved in his father's eyes. And because they had done such evil to Joseph, I believe the brothers begin to treasure him like the father treasured him, if you can understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
We don't think about this, but all of them were flesh, just like you and I are flesh. And I believe that's what happened. And he did. He was that, like you said, a go-between between them.
I'm debating. I love
We have to remember also that Benjamin and Judah were blood brothers. They were born to the same mother and father.
Mm,
Mm,
mm.
Benjamin is from Rachel,
Now,
and
the last one,
Judah is from
Rachel.
Leah.
yeah, from Leah.
Oh, Joseph, never mind.
Joseph
Yeah,
is who he
Joseph.
was talking about.
Joseph's
I thought
who-
it might have been it.
No, I got you. But the reason I believe Benjamin, or at least the bulk of the tribe of Benjamin, went with the house of Judah is because from that point forward, from the split, the fortunes of Benjamin are tied to Judah in the scriptures. So now I also found, and Lord help them, Yahweh help. I don't know how they managed to do this, but gotquestions.org, they thoroughly Christian website. Somebody's been editing their posts, updating them. Because when we first started out, I used that site a lot to, because I was still kind of in the Christian orthodoxy. Some of the posts that I remember from before have changed to be more in line with the Messianic viewpoint. And I ran into one, and I looked up, because I print these things off. I went back and I looked at them. They've been edited. And they don't tell you it's been edited, but it's been updated more in line to thinking that we would have. And I've been finding a lot of their work is doctrinally solid now, where before it wasn't.
Yeah, I have found, I was surprised because I've been doing some research, like when I'm doing sermons and stuff, they've actually got some good stuff out there.
Yes, they didn't used to.
Yeah.
And I've printed it. And I've looked. They've updated it.
The first time that we had feast here at the house, my neighbor was Arthur Zedeker, lived directly across the street. And we were putting up, the stuff for the feast. And we were in the process of building, the
Sukkah.
Yes, thank you. And he said to Kenyon, he said, I see you're building a sukkah. I just think that's fantastic. He was a member of the St. Andrew Baptist Church. And it just kind of like, well, how do you know that? Because I know they don't study that. But no, they had a class on the feast. And he knew about that. And I thought that was really neat because, it's not in the normal teaching of the Baptist Church. But yeah, I think some of them are beginning to see. It's just like
Prophecy.
It's just like this Torah club that Amy and Bran are going to right now that they have on Sunday in between the morning and the evening service. And all of them are just church folks, but they want to know about the Torah. See, that's Yahweh. That,
Yes.
you as a person cannot accomplish that. That's what I was telling Kenyon this morning.
And
Only
that-
Yahweh.
You're hitting it what I think is the key to Benjamin, and we'll get to that in a minute. Because like I said, praise Yahweh. I found this. What I'm about to go over is gotquestions.org. They said it picks up, and it noticed. They're a warlike nature of a small tribe of Benjamin becomes well known as exhibited in their swordsmen, but also their bowmen and their slingers. Benjamin's blessing has 3 parts. Compared to a wolf, his blessing has 2 time frames: morning and evening. End of the day and beginning of the day. So an ending and a beginning. It has 2 actions. He devours and he divides. 2 outcomes: prey and spoil. He devours prey and he divides spoil. This sets up a type of before and after experience for Benjamin and his offspring. And when I read this, the reason I included this piece in my notes is because this is speaking to something I'd already grabbed, a thread I was already pulling. And I was like, they can't be getting this right. Oh, they do. I don't think they realized how right they are, but they got it right.
Yeah, but see, that's Yahweh. Yahweh,
Yes.
Yahweh can use anything
So
to bring out his truth.
before Saul, we have Ehud. He's a great warrior, and he delivers Israel from Moab, which that's one of Israel's ancestral enemies. Then King Saul becomes the first king of Israel. And then Mordecai and Esther, they're both from the tribe of Benjamin, and they deliver the house of Judah from death. Not the Jews, like they got this written in here. Yes, it's Jews, but that's house of Judah. And then finally, we have the Apostle Paul, who he himself affirms he's from the tribe of Benjamin.
Absolutely.
So their warlike nature is not only defensive of their country, but it's also depravity within their country. Benjamin has a really bad mark in its history. And we'll deal with that specifically in a minute. But this article wraps up this way. Benjamin has great truths to teach. First, Yahweh doesn't see, well, I add Yahweh, but Yahweh doesn't see men as men see. He doesn't see the way men see, for Yahweh looks at the heart. Yahweh saw a warrior inside of Benjamin. Outwardly, others saw him as the youngest son and his tribe as the smallest tribe. But Yahweh saw more, a man who would both devour and divide. The second lesson for us lies in the two Sauls who came from the tribe of Benjamin. King Saul, the epitome of sin nature in its war against Yahweh, and Saul, Paul, the apostle, whose nature was changed by Yahweh from a murderous Pharisee to the apostle of grace. Paul is the example of what Yahweh does to those who come to Messiah in faith. Benjamin's our lesson. You start out, he's the king, okay? And then that's what causes the split with Benjamin is half of them want to keep the kingship. They want to keep the crown. So they're not happy with Judah because Judah now has the crown, but half of them are also loyal to David. And you got to read through Chronicles and Kings to see the history there. That's what causes the rift within the tribe of Benjamin. So half of them go with the house of Israel, half with the house of Judah. But it starts out with a Benjamite who is just totally rebellious to Yahweh. And it ends with a Benjamite who was rebellious to Yahweh and his people that gets changed by Yahweh and now becomes the apostle to the Gentiles, which makes sense because he's going to take that part of the Benjamites and go out and become fishers of men, which in the process unites the whole tribe of Benjamin back together again and starts drawing the house of Israel back into the house of Judah and starts recombining that stick at that time. I have firmly come to the understanding that Ezekiel 37 is a long process. It started at the establishment of the new covenant. It is ongoing today. It is the bringing back together of both houses. It'll culminate in the second coming, in my understanding.
And the thing I'm seeing so clear now is that Saul was there with them when they said they wanted to crucify him.
Mm-hmm.
He was with them
At
that
that
put
time.
him on the
Mhm.
stake. He was with them when he killed everybody he could find that believed in Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
But Yahweh took him and changed him. And we know him as Paul. That we know by reading his books of what he had to fight every day because he had to live with what he had done. I guarantee you know what I'm talking about because
Yes.
you went to war. If
Yes.
you don't go to war, you don't understand.
No, I
this,
understand. You live with the ghosts of your
yes,
memories.
Absolutely.
Look at the pattern. So Benjamin is all about King Saul. And then when the crown is taken from Saul and given to David, King David, it causes a rift in the tribe of Benjamin. So eventually half of the tribe reconciles with the new king and the bloodline going to Judah, which was prophesied. The scepter will remain with Judah. So, okay, that half of the tribe, which Paul's going to come from that part of the tribe of Benjamin, they're now loyal to that king. So why is he killing the new king? Because as being from the house of Judah, Yeshua, but he's also changing the whole notion of kingship again. There's a change in the kingship and the
Not
way
just
it
the
works,
kingship,
but
the
also
priest.
the priesthood. I was
Yeah.
going to get that. You're ahead of
Yeah.
me. So he's upsetting their order again. So the new covenant and the tribe of Benjamin is once again defending what they think to be right.
We're
And
going back, see,
yes,
we're going back
it's a
to the
repetition
order
of that.
Melchizedek.
Yes.
You know, we're moving out of the Levites, and we're going back to the beginning. And I think that's why people have such a hard time. Is we're taught to
We're
do
reversing
from the beginning
Hermon.
to the end. This is not.
This is this way.
This is a Hebrew message.
Yes. So up from here up to the Apostle John and before, the law and the prophets were taught. From this point forward, and violent men have tried to take it. From this point forward, he's going to teach the gospel. The gospel is the taking back and reversing of all of that stuff. Yes. Yes.
Going back to
These patterns repeat. And Benjamin is integral into all of this. So we've already covered this. In Genesis chapter 31, the story is verse 22 through 35. But the point here is Jacob curses his beloved wife without knowing it. And he brings death to her and her offspring. So at that point, Joseph, who's going to father Ephraim, who's going to be the leader of the house of Israel, and Israel, Jacob, the man Israel at that point is going to hand the birthright. All the promises that were made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are going to now be handed to Ephraim. By the way, he's half Gentile. By the Jewish way of counting, he's full Gentile. Why do I say that? Where do you trace your lineage
For
from?
the mother.
The mother. His mother's a Gentile. So by the Jewish way of counting, he's a full Ephraim's full Gentile. By the Jewish way of counting this. But the birthright's going to go to Ephraim. Well, Ephraim's already been condemned to death. We already prophetically, because of the curse that Jacob laid on Rachel without knowing it, he just condemned the northern kingdom to be divorced without realizing it. Even though Yahweh, speaking through the prophet Jeremiah, says that the house of Judah will be more wicked than her sister, the house of Israel. More
But
rebellious.
he had to stay married to her.
Had to stay
because of
married to her.
The Torah. Yes.
Otherwise, his vows and promises and covenants would have been void, and he wouldn't be Yahweh.
Yes, sir.
So we've got that. Now we're going to go to Genesis 37, verses 1 through 11. Now, it may not seem like this is linked to Benjamin, but oh, yes, it is. This is the story of Joseph. When he was 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father, about his brothers. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all the other sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a multicolored tunic. And his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. This animosity toward Joseph is important, because Benjamin is caught up in this. Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to the dream which I have had. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf stood up and also remained standing, and behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." Then his brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us, or are you really going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Well, this is a prophecy that Ephraim will lead the house of Israel at some point. Then he had yet another dream, and informed his brothers of it, and said, "Behold, I have had yet another dream. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." He also told it to his father as well as to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have had? Am I and your mother and your brothers actually going to come to bow down to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind.
It's interesting to note that he said 11,000 before, and Benjamin hadn't been born yet.
Yeah. Exactly.
So Benjamin is wrapped up in this. How do you think Benjamin's so integral to this one? Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is from Amy Gast. She says, "Was it still a parental inheritance culturally at that time in history? Just curious." She says, "I know how he would be reckoned today."
Yes, there were still parental inheritances. And it should have gone to Reuben being the oldest son. But that got messed up because of what's about to happen. Now, from what I've been able to read culturally, that multicolored robe, that's important. Because the multicolored robe usually went to the firstborn son. Well, Joseph is the firstborn son in a way. Who's he firstborn son of? Rachel. The wife that Jacob wanted from the beginning.
Then he had to work 14 years for.
Yep.
Yes. So that multicolored robe signifies the inheritance right. Now this is important. This is why I believe that's true, folks. Who's going to end up with the birthright? An offspring of Joseph.
That last 7 years, was for his riches.
Yes.
This was for
7 and
Leah.
7.
This was for Rachel, but that next 7 was for his riches. There's something there too.
Yeah, especially since there's 3 sevens. I see both of you. Go ahead.
It don't matter. One of the things to look for too that happens a lot, because culturally it goes to the firstborn son, but you'll see over and over again that a second or another is designated for that inheritance.
It can be moved.
Because they are the more righteous
individual.
There you go. Yes.
Children.
It can be
It
moved.
didn't go to Reuben because Reuben broke Torah.
Yeah.
He looked
Yeah.
at his
Yeah.
father's nakedness,
Which is
but
what?
it was his concubine
Yes.
that he did.
Yes.
And that was the reason he didn't get the birthright.
Huh?
I wasn't asking anything.
Oh, I thought you had your hand up.
That's right.
Oh, okay. Then I saw you out of the corner of my eye. I thought you had your hand up. But yeah, there's this multicolored robe is important because in their culture, from what I've been able to understand, what what Jacob was telling the brothers is, hey, I'm going to be giving the birthright to your brother Joseph. Now, at the time that they find Joseph again in Egypt, he's no longer in the picture for the birthright because they all think he's dead. Okay, well, the brothers know what happened to him, but father thinks he's dead. So this is important. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump us up to Genesis 37, verses 18 through 24. And y'all are only, at this point, they're going to Egypt. They need grain to live and everything. They've encountered Joseph again. And picking up in verse 18, he says, when they saw him, well, this is before, this is where they sell him. When they saw him from a distance and before he came closer to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. Okay, so they want to put Joseph to death. And here's where Reuben falls short. He says, Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands by saying, let's not take his life. Then Reuben said to them, shed no blood, throw him into the pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, so that later he could rescue him out of their hands and return him to his father. Now, Reuben meant well, but he still didn't have the courage to stand up to his brothers. So he lost the chance here to redeem himself. The next story is where we're going to see Judah steps up and takes over and does what Reuben should have done. He confronts his brothers and everybody. That's in Genesis 43, verses 1 through 10. The point here where, Joseph's telling him, bring me your...
him out of the pit and sold him for a slave.
Yes. But he's like, okay, bring me your youngest brother. And we've gone through that thing. The key verse here, this is Judah talking to his father, Jacob. He says, I myself will take responsibility for him, for Benjamin. You may demand him back from me. If I do not bring him back to you and present him to you, then you can let me take the blame forever. So when the tribes split, Judah is still taking care of Benjamin. And when the son comes to reclaim, Yahweh says, hey, I want Benjamin back. And guess who where the bulk of the apostles come from? From the tribe of Benjamin. This is prophetic in nature here too. Judah's bringing prophecy down on himself without even knowing it. He says, give me Benjamin to watch after. So Benjamin stays with Judah, and the fate of Benjamin is rested and tied with Judah ever since the split, until the new covenant comes and starts putting everything back together. What happened when the new covenant came? The father said, give me my beloved youngest son back, Judah. Judah says, here he is. I kept him safe. But Benjamin also kept Judah safe the whole time because Benjamin was the battle axe. So they preserved each other.
And we go back right after that where you were reading, where, he set the table for all of them. And he gave Benjamin 5 times what all the others had. And there's something in that too.
Well, 5's the number of
Torah
and righteousness. So he, just by giving him 5 times more, his brothers might very well have taken that as a slap in the face. Because he's saying, oh, this is righteousness, y'all were unrighteous. Now for the next 2 parts I brought for you. This one here is what got me. Genesis 49:27. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, and in the evening he divides the spoils. So ravenous wolf. Think about a ravenous wolf. Got questions. They said, well, that's because he's a warrior. Yes, he is. But the term here is ravenous. You can't satisfy a ravenous wolf. The hunger is never satisfied. So the desire for bloodlust and fighting and rebellion and just, the wayward son, it also not only protects, it destroys. This is part of what happens to Benjamin. Because they're so ravenous and because they just take to their swords first without even thinking of anything, the tribe of Benjamin's almost destroyed because of this. That's where we're going to go next. And it is what happens to Benjamin parallels Sodom and Gomorrah very closely. The other prophecy is in Deuteronomy 33:12, and also divide the spoils. That's at night. That's in the later half of Benjamin. Benjamin's one of the ones who brings the gospel to the world. Divides the spoils of what? The spoils that the son earned when he went to the cross and he was resurrected. He brought much booty with him. Benjamin helps send the gospel message. He's sending the spoils of that spiritual war and that spiritual victory on the cross. He's helping divide it amongst the Gentile nations and to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So there's that prophecy for Benjamin, but also in Deuteronomy 33:12. May the beloved of Yahweh live in security beside him, beside Benjamin. The beloved of Yahweh, Judah on one side, house of Israel on the other. The scepter and the birthright are beside Benjamin on both sides. Who shields him all the day long. Benjamin is shielded by Yahweh, and he lives between his shoulders. Between the two witnesses, Judah and the house of Israel, lies Benjamin. Between the shoulders, the two wings, the two eagles, the two witnesses, the two olive trees, the two lampstands, Benjamin lives right between the two of them. And he's shielded. He's protected by Yahweh. He's beloved of Yahweh because he's the youngest. All of this ties Benjamin together. Benjamin's crucial to the delivery of the gospel and to the reuniting of everything. The youngest, the last shall be first. And in a lot of ways, he is. So I told you about, and I don't want to read through this. I want us to be able to talk about this, but the stories in Judges 19 and 20. Y'all remember the Levite who ends up staying the night in that Benjamite town? And what do the Benjamites come to him and what they want to do? They come to the man comes out of the field. Nobody will take the Levite in because that's the way hospitality works in their culture. If you take the Levite in, you're responsible for him. You got to feed him. You got to take care of whoever's with him and whatever animals he has. It's expensive. It costs money. And then you got to protect him and keep him safe. So the old man takes the Levite and his concubine into his house, and the Benjamites come and say, send me the man so we can have sexual relations with him. Where have we heard this before? Sodom and Gomorrah. So what do they do instead? The man offers up the concubine, and I think there's another woman in the house. I think he offers up both of the women. What happened in Sodom and Gomorrah? Offered up his virgin daughters. And the people basically rape the women to death. And the concubine is at the door in the morning. She crawls back to the door and she's dead. So the Levite cuts her up into 12 sections and sends a piece of her to each one of the tribes. And the tribes are enraged. What the heck is this? What's this mean? And when they find out, they come to war against Benjamin. And they tell Benjamin, send us the unrighteous people who did this. Just give us the guilty. Benjamin says no. They pick up their weapons. They're going to go to war against all of Israel. And for a while, they're winning. But eventually, they're almost wiped out because of what they did. And if it hadn't been for the tribes repenting and relenting of their hatred against Benjamin and then giving some, I think it was brides that they gave back to Benjamin so that they could grow their numbers back, Benjamin probably would be no more. But when I read that story, the parallels to what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, and what was the deal? If there are so many righteous men left in Sodom and Gomorrah, Yahweh was going to spare them. They found one man. So they said, okay,
and
that
I'm
one
not
man
real
got
sure
him.
about him.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
The fact that he was still living there.
That's right.
Okay. But they only found the one righteous man. And they're going to be destroyed. Where was the righteous people in this township? It was just the man who gave hospitality to the Levite and his concubine. Seemed to be the only righteous person left in that town. And what did the Benjamites do? They totally forgot the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they went and said, okay, our way, to heck with it, we'll go to arms against all of the rest of Israel, all of our brothers. There's a parallel there. I mean, it's not word one for one, but it is a parallel story. And it struck me, the crime is essentially the same. In Gomorrah, I know everybody looks at, well, it was homosexuality and they were going after the angels and blah, blah, blah. But it was also an assault against hospitality, which is a huge custom. That is a big deal to their world. It was an assault on hospitality as well that resulted in murder. That's an apples to apples to what Benjamin did. And I didn't realize just how Benjamin literally is Paul before he converts. Man, he's a murderous tribe, a ravenous wolf. The ravenous wolf might be a great warrior, but the ravenous wolf only knows one thing: feed my belly. He doesn't care who he's feeding it with.
It's just satisfying.
So there was no righteousness in Benjamin at this point. Not really. He didn't care if he was fighting for righteousness or fighting for his own lawlessness. He just wanted to fight.
It's kind of like mercenaries today.
Yes. But look at what the change that ends up happening because of Yahweh and his son. And the changes at the cross, Yahweh can make even that tribe into something new. All you got to do is come to trust in him and his son, in his Torah, and he can change you into something new.
Wow, look, boy, what a parallel to Paul's life. He was
And he's a
ravenous
Benjamite.
wolf. Yeah,
And he's
And
a
then-
Benjamite. So his
and then-
prophetic
and-
nature,
and later in his life, he ended up dividing the spoils.
by disseminating the gospel to the lost house of Israel and the Gentiles grafted in. It repeats over and over again. And it's the reason we see it as in cycles is because we're thinking like Greeks. You think like a Hebrew, it's in your nature. It was prophesied over you or cursed over you. It's in your nature from now on, forever and ever, amen. It will be in your nature. So Benjamin is not only going to be the smallest and the youngest and everything, but he's going to have a tendency to be quick with the sword. But now, after the new covenant, he's going to be quick with grace.
What happened on the mount? Messiah was there.
Yes.
They were sleeping, but they did wake up when the soldiers came.
Oh,
First
yeah.
thing
Okay, I
Peter
see where
did
you're
was
at.
cut an ear off.
Yep.
You know,
We'll say in Saul, he was quick with the sword of the Spirit, the word.
Yeah, but after his conversion, he divided the spoils more than being quick with the sword. And he was quick with the spoils of the word. He gave the word out.
I think that's
Sometimes
why
the
it's
word is a
called-
double-edged sword. It can be good for
It says
the
it is.
yeah, it'll be good for those who will receive it. It's not so nice for those who want to reject it.
But
So
that's one of the reasons he kept having to say he died daily. He had to kill that flesh, kill that flesh, kill
Yes.
that flesh, because that flesh wanted to do what?
wanted to go back to slinging that sword the wrong way. And I understand. But now Benjamin, in my studies with Benjamin, I see that from the even before he's born, he is being played into this in ways that I hadn't understood yet. Like with Joseph, before Benjamin's born, Joseph's being prophesied over, and he's been cursed he won't live, and then later on, Joseph and Benjamin being the house of the Rachel's children and everything, they're going to be connected to the house of Israel, but Benjamin's going to split, and he's like got a foot in both houses. He keeps them kind of united, Benjamin's tribe, his people. And you're going to find that prophetic, because of what happens with Benjamin, you're also going to find a little bit of all of the other prophecies within him. He's all 12 tribes, all 13 tribes, because of a little bit of each of the tribes, the people were given to Benjamin. Well, guess what comes along with that? Their prophetic nature comes too, so it's going to get mixed. So far as I know in Scripture, Benjamin's the only tribe that does that. I know that they have a little mixing here and there, but usually the tribes married within tribes. After that little event with the Levite and the concubine, Benjamin's a mutt. But he still has his prophetic nature in general, but he becomes basically a Hebrew mutt because he's a little bit of all the tribes now. Well, look at how he's going to have a role in fulfilling the prophecy of Ezekiel 37. He's going to help bring the two sticks back together. That's perfect. He's already a mutt. He is a combined. His tribe is already combined with all the tribes. He's got a little of all of their blood in him. So that seems to fit, seems to work, especially since the house of Judah also gets a little bit of the blood. Remember, when they split, not everybody in those 10 kingdoms went with the house of Israel. Some of them stayed with the house of Judah. The spiritually faithful stayed with the house of Judah. So you had an influx of other peoples into Judah. Now, we don't know how that worked. They probably stayed within their own little communities, but sooner or later, it all becomes known as the Jews. And this is one of the places where the modern world has a huge problem. We think the Jews are all that's left.
They have a confusion.
That is not what the Bible says. And it took me forever to realize that. Once I understood that, especially when you're reading the prophets, Jacob is the whole house. If it says whole house of Israel after the split, you're talking about the northern kingdom. If it says house of Judah, you're talking about the Jews. Hebrews, that's not just going to be necessarily just the 12 sons of Jacob and his descendants. That's going to be anybody grafted in with them as well. That's those who have crossed over, who
And
have
right
been
there,
reborn.
I think when Israel, adopted those two boys, crossed his hands and said, as Reuben and Simeon, I think it was, are mine, these are mine. He showed that adoption, that it was, that there wasn't anything to it.
And in the process, he foreshadows and affirms the promises Yahweh's already made to adopt the Gentiles back in. He says, these are in Deuteronomy 32, he gives the nations to the divine council. He gives them over according to their times. In Deuteronomy 32, Moses is referring back to Genesis 10 and 11. So all the nations are divided up. He says, but Israel's mine. And then he turns around later on in that same area and he says, but I will reclaim all of the nations. And he promises Abraham, the whole world will be blessed through you and your seed. Now he's foreshadowing the Messiah, but he's also talking about all the work that's going to be done through those obedient people. And notice what he does with Abraham. He's going to be a multitude of people. People forget. The promises go through Isaac and Jacob and then into Joseph. The promises, but not all of them. The inheritance promises stayed, but some of those promises went to the other people as well. And we forget this. Ishmael's going to be a big kingdom, 12 princes.
And
those are the Arab people.
And the 6 sons of Keturah.
Oh, there are other descendants of Abraham that are still in play. There are other descendants of Jacob that are still in play. People forget that there's blessings over Esau, blessings and curses.
Oh.
So our Edomites and the Moabites.
Isn't there anything left? He'd already give up his, his birthright and his blessing.
So, and then the blessing over Esau is very similar to the blessing over Ishmael. They're both going to be hotheads that like to lift the hand quick, the sword quick. Well, it sounds very much like Benjamin.
And when they were going into the land, he told them, you can't have anything you will buy from them.
Yeah.
Not even as much as what the dirt can get in your sandal, you'll get it out before you get out of there.
Because Yahweh had made promises.
Yes.
But pay attention to those promises. They also include, I'm reserving them for when I want to destroy them.
Yeah.
Okay? Their iniquity is not yet full.
Full.
Yahweh tells us early on that they're destined to destruction. Why? Because they were the sons of Abraham trying to do it his way? No.
Sarah.
And that wasn't it either. It was because Ishmael is not obedient, and neither is Esau.
Well, we don't know whether Ishmael would have been obedient or not. At 13 years old, he was cast out.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we know that Yahweh ministered to him and saved him.
Now we're told that he was mocking Isaac.
Yeah.
And laughing and everything. From what I understand reading the rabbis, there's something really weird going on in the Hebrew there that does not translate to English.
Into English.
It's more than mocking him.
There's some even,
there's an implied threat.
Well, and there are. It's very possible that there's even sexual connotations in that description in the language it's used.
We know this. It's more than just teasing.
Yeah.
Because Sarah goes bat crack crazy when she finds out about it. Okay, if all it was just teasings of kids, then his mother overreacts.
Yeah,
and that would have drawn her. Abraham would have got onto her in their culture, but he supports her, so we know that there's more going on in that scene than we can understand in our world today. We've lost the cultural connection to that. We don't understand the Hebrew today as well as they would have done back there. But there's something veiled in that passage that says that Ishmael was doing something threatening in some way.
It could have been a combination of both because she didn't have him until she was old.
Yes.
And that makes you more protective. I don't, now as an old woman, I don't, I see things that I didn't see when I was younger.
Yes.
But I didn't realize where it's dangerous even when I was younger. Now, after all these years, I understand that it is. And I think that's why grandparents shouldn't raise children. Because you do. It's a change in what happens.
This is one of those areas where I think if we just stick to the strict word of the scripture, we'll get enough of it to understand it, but we miss what would have already, this is the air that they would have breathed at the time. A reader of Moses reading Genesis would have understood because of the culture. Abraham's not going to throw Hagar out with his son just because Sarah got ticked off. That didn't happen in their culture. He'd brought the boom down on Sarah. But if Sarah comes and says, hey, Ishmael's threatening Isaac, whole different suit. Okay, that can get you banished. So I think there is something more going on here that's lost to us culturally. It's just something to hold in your mind. So there's probably Ishmael did something somewhere because Yahweh protected him, but he's been marked ever since. He's the father of Arabs. What does Arab mean? Arab is Aramaic for doesn't mix. In our world today, to put it, doesn't play well with others. And they don't. I mean, his hand's against everybody. And when you get everybody else out of the Arabs world, they'll turn on each other and start fighting against each other. And if you get all the other different clans out of the way, the clan will start fighting against each other by families. And if you get that out of the way, the family will go. It's in their nature. It's in their blood. It was prophesied over them. It's who they are as a people. Now, in a lot of ways, you should have grace for them on that. That was prophesied over them before they were even, before they even existed. That happened over them. That goes back to Ishmael. But Jacob, people get onto the Jews because they say, well, they got a way of cheating things, right? They earn by cheating. Guess what's going to be in their nature, folks? Jacob. How did he get that name?
That's right.
Okay, it's going to be in their nature to be perceived that way. We've just got to understand this is how this stuff seems to work. Benjamin has a very complicated prophetic nature and role in the story of Yahweh and his people. He's right in the center of it. What do you mean by he's in the center? He's right in between his shoulders, right in the shoulder blades, right in the middle of his back.
But according
between
to
Judah
what we have
and Joseph
in our scripture, it says that, his mother was the one that put everything on him and sent him in to his father. He didn't just out of his own mind decide that he was going to do that.
Yes, he had help, but he's still responsible for that.
He went.
Yes, he went. And he knew what he was doing. He even told Mom, Dad finds out about this, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
He knew that he shouldn't have been doing that.
On his way back, he just knew he was going to die because he knew that he was going to kill him.
But it started even before then. Don't forget, he grabs him by the ankle. Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, there's prophetic natures to people, and it sticks with their descendants.
All the way down to today.
And this is where I got with Benjamin. I'll probably keep pulling on this thread because there's something still more here that I'm not seeing yet. But there's more connections with Benjamin than I realized. And then what started it all was the parallel of the story with the Levite and his concubine. I'm like, whoa. That sounds like Sodom and Gomorrah to me. Benjamin? And I remembered what Sister Joellen had said about Benjamin will not live because of the curse on Rachel stealing the idols. And I'm like, okay, got to be more. So I started pulling on Benjamin. Benjamin is connected in really small, subtle ways.
Having him killed her, that's how she died, was giving birth to him. And that's why she had to be buried where she was buried, because they weren't near the burying place.
So I just wanted us to take a look at Benjamin, and I got a feeling that what we're going to do until I'm told to go somewhere else, I think for the next few Sabbaths, I'm going to pick out pieces of Israel's history. There's things for us to learn from the history of Israel.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to go look at the empire of King David and Solomon. Shlomo, as you say it. That empire has been erased from human history.
Yeah.
It's even been erased from the memory of the believers. But did you know that if you pay attention and you look for it real close and carefully, you're going to find records of that empire in the world? Outside of it, they talk about it in the world.
Sure.
They have a different name for King Solomon, different name, but it reached as far as the Polynesian Islands.
Oh, yeah.
So this was the largest reach. It wasn't land-wise, it wasn't the largest empire, but it was the most powerful, richest, far-reachingest empire of ancient times, and it has been erased.
Especially in the days of Solomon.
Yeah.
Now, Solomon he didn't have to spend any money on war.
No.
It was 40 years of peace. And he did. His reach went. That's what all those wives were about.
Yes.
People talk about that.
They were
Those were
concubines.
peace treaties.
Yes.
They weren't wives nor concubines.
They were there.
They were peace treaties.
Because at the time, they were so prosperous and everything. Had he turned Joseph and Benjamin loose on you,
Oh, man.
it would not have been good. And he doesn't need the numbers. He had some fierce warriors on his hand. And incidentally, there's part of Benjamin still attached to the house of Judah. This is why the Arabs have not been able to wipe outnumber them 100-1, and they've not been able to wipe little Israel off the face of the map since 1948. They always get their butts whooped. That's because there's some Benjamites still hanging around with Judah. Okay, you've got some warriors in the IDF, but it's also because somebody else fights with Israel, with Judah, with the house of Judah. Yahweh fights for them. That's still a married bride. We're still betrothed now again. The house of Israel's betrothed again.
Army.
But
I don't know if any of you remember, but when there was the really bad earthquake in Haiti, and everybody went, to help. The very first one to get their thing together was Israel.
Yep.
It's not just the warriors, it's everything.
The only peoples who have ever sent a lot of aid to other nations are Yahweh's people. Israel and her 7 cubs, which would be the English-speaking nations in the world today.
This is from Walking with Messiah. It says, I've spent hours talking with Hawaiian royalty about the impression on founding of the island culture and the traders and the leaders of those who served the mighty one whose name could not be spoken.
Yahweh.
Yep.
Yeah. You have to dig and you have to look at it from anthropological and
Well, you
sociological
have to know
perspectives.
that there
you'll
was
find
6. Keturah had 6 sons, and what Abraham said was, go to the east and get away from Isaac. That's what he said. But those sons had been taught just like the other sons. Abraham didn't change his ways,
But this is another one. A lot of people, this is where the Hebrew roots movement gets itself in a little bit of trouble. Because a word sounds alike, they think they're connected. That's a fallacy. That doesn't work. You have to look at the root words of different words and trace them through the different languages. The Scythians, everybody, whatever. When you look at how the world does it, they don't get the Scythians right. The Scythians are connected to the Huns. Do you realize what Scythian is a derivative of? It's a derivative of the word Isaac. It's just like Saxons are a derivative of the word Isaac. You know where the Saxons come from, right? They're Vikings. They're all connected. And Thomas Jefferson was surprised to find that the Saxons had a slightly modified rule of law that matched Moses. He saw, when he was studying the Saxons, he goes, hey, it's right out of Moses. That's because they're descendants of Isaac. It's in their name. Dan is a serpent in the way. Start looking for every place that's going to have that derivative of Dan in it. Denmark was named after Dan. The Danube River is named after. He goes up through Russia. He goes all through the coastal lands because he was a seagoing people. He's all over the coastal lands of Europe. Dan is everywhere. Dan is even in the Nova Scotia northeast section of this country.
Well, I believe
Some
he
of-
was the
some of
Danish
those-
that
He is the Danish, yes.
that came, if you study those early years of the continent over there, England and the rest of it, you'll see those communities that cropped up before anything else. They were there first.
But you're also going to find that Dan leaves Egypt at the time of the Exodus. He's the Argonauts. The tribe of Dan is the Argonauts, which means they are the royal families that become the kingdom of Greece and later the kingdom of Rome. Greece and Rome is connected to the Hebrew people.
Absolutely.
Which is why the prophecy says, I'll raise up your sons, O Zion, those who still know who they are, against your sons, O Greece, the Greco-Roman Empire, who had forgotten who they were. And doesn't prophecy tell us that the house of Israel has forgotten who it is? But in the latter days, real close to the end, Ephraim will remember. The house of Israel will remember.
And the reason they forgot was because in their mind there was nothing greater than them.
Yes, exactly. But Dan is also very arrogant and the quickest to go
And they believe they
apostate.
came from the gods.
Yes, they were the quickest to go apostate. So we will study some more of this. I think we do need a little bit, Yahweh's people need a better understanding of the history of Yahweh's people. Because his prophets speak to us about the history. And remember what he tells us, every time we want to restore, every time his people needed to be restored, what did he start with? Remember. I think we need to remember. So I'm going to be there for a little while.
That's another thing. If anybody has any time that they've got that they can do a little study in, that mythology, both Greek and Roman, is interesting. And there's a lot of little nuggets in there too that you can pull out and look at and say, I think I know where they got that from.
You can trace the Roman to the Greek to the Babylonian. Straight line. Yep. I've been doing that lately.
I took Latin in high school for, you know what I took it for? I didn't take it for the language. I took it for the mythology.
But that book I bought on the deities and demons in the Bible, that thing's enlightening. When you start seeing, trace them all back. Yes. Yep. Because Baal and Bel are the same God, and Bel is Allah. Woohoo! Allah is a god of material gain and war. That's Islam in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is it?
So, all right, that's all I have for today. I think we have an elders meeting here real quick.